Okay, you've seen lots of different cool special effects. I hope you've been enjoying and learning a lot. And in the last set of exercises, you saw how we could start combining different commands, different tools, different settings, and so on together inside Photoshop to pull off some kind of special effect. And I'd like to continue in that sort of theme. In the next set of exercises, I want to show you how to create a chiseled ice text effect. It's a really cool effect. I think you'll like it. And we're going to be combining some Photoshop filters and some blending modes and, a couple of different tools and things like this. So I think you're going to like this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new document here inside Photoshop, a brand new blank file. Go ahead and choose File New or hit Command N or Control N. That's just fine. And let's see here. I'm going to set the width of my file to 7.5 inches. And I'll set the height of my new file to 4.5 inches, and I'll set the resolution to 300. Okay, perfect. Go ahead and click on OK to create that new file. Inside the Layers palette, I'm going to go and create a brand new blank layer for myself. You can rename this if you want, although we don't really know what's going to happen on this layer yet, so we don't know what to call it. I'm just going to leave mine as Layer 1 for now. That's fine. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to go and create a custom gradient. And we've seen gradients come up a couple of times here during our time together. I'm going to hit the G key on my keyboard, and that, of course, flips me into the gradient tool. And if I drop down the menu at the top here, of course, we've seen the defaults here before, sort of the preset gradients that we have available. Now, what I want you to do, though, is rather than choosing one of these gradients, go ahead and click on this gradient swatch. And you might recall this from earlier. That brings us into the gradient editor. So we want to go and create a custom gradient for ourselves. So it doesn't really matter what you see in this bottom area here. Here I clicked on the red to green gradient earlier, so that's the one that's coming up. But you and I are going to go and create our own custom gradient. I'm going to start on the left-hand color swatch. Go ahead and double-click on that color stop there, and I've got some RGB color values that I'd like you to type into the R, G, and B fields inside Photoshop's color picker. So I'm going to type in here 0, tab 1, tab 30, and we should get a very, very, very dark blue, almost a black. That's what we want there. Go ahead and click on OK. Loads that color into the stop there, of course. Along this gradient ramp, I want to go and add in a second color stop, or I guess actually a third color stop, because we already have two there. So maybe about there, I'm going to click. And you'll notice, by the way, that you get a location field down at the bottom here. I'm actually going to drag this guy to the right to about 75%, right there. Okay, perfect. Okay, go ahead and double click on this guy, and let's go and set this guy's RGB values. I'm going to set the red value to 0 again. The G value is going to be 5. And for blue, let's type in 51. Actually, you know what? I typed in the wrong values. These are the values that we want for our last color stop. But you know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click on OK anyway. And what I'll do is I'll just flip my two color stops. So I'm just going to do something like that. So just drag your rightmost color stop over towards the left, and we'll drop this guy over on the right. Okay. Now, this green stop that I have here, I'm going to move him back to the 75% location there, and let's go and set his color. And his RGB values are red is going to be 0, and green is going to be 100. And for blue, let's do 155. And that should give us a sort of a lighter blue there anyway. Go ahead and click on OK. So now our gradient goes from a very dark blue to a light blue back to a darker blue, almost sort of a purple there. Okay, great. Go ahead and click on OK. That loads the swatch into our gradient tool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to drag from the top of my file down to the bottom, and we wind up with something like this. Okay, perfect. Let's throw in some text. I'm going to hit the T key on my keyboard to flip over to the type tool. Go ahead and single click, and you can type in whatever you want. You could type in ice, or you could type in your name, or whatever you want. I'm just going to type in the word ice, and I'll go back to my move tool inside the toolbox. And I'll use my free transform, Command T or Control T. You've seen me use this trick a couple of times to crank up the size of my text. Maybe about, I want to leave myself a little bit of space actually, maybe about like that. And by the way, I'm holding down Shift as I drag from the corners. Something like that, I think looks good. As far as the font that you use, you might want to hit the T key on your keyboard again and select your text there. The font that we want to use is, we want to use a nice big thick font. And I went and created an extra text layer there. We want to use a nice thick font. So I'm using a font that I had selected earlier, which is Manager Bold. I expect that you don't have that font installed. Find something that's nice and thick though. We want, you know, the thicker the font, the better, essentially. So I'm going to stick with my Manager font here, but for yourself, you might want to go and choose a different font.